I guess that's what they would describe, how they would describe a witch, as often being like evil and unattractive and, gonna put a spell to harm
Horny and
you. Yeah, an outcast just by nature. I don't know if it's like she is an outcast from their perspective, if she's an outcast because she is a witch or if she's a witch because she's an outcast. Hey y'all! Welcome back to another fabulous episode of Queer 101, the podcast, where we talk about any and everything under the sun, including queer art, queer literature, queer history, queer lives, whatever the hell we want to. My name is Peppermint.
And I am Hugh the historian, also known as Hugh Ryan.
Ah! So listen, y'all, before we even jump in, I just want to say two things. Number one, the queer community has definitely had a huge win recently. The Supreme Court decided not to hear the case on that awful, terrible lady. I ain't even going to bring up her name, but you already
No
know. That would have basically challenged the federal ruling on same-sex marriage.
need.
And which is, I mean, it's egregious. I do want to say though that this is not a reason. It's a reason to celebrate for now, because it's sandwiched right in between the wonderful news and performance at the elections, in between the terrible, like now, I guess 2 weeks ago now, or last month, whatever, terrible showing by the Democrats in Congress, and then this ruling. However, the Heritage Foundation and the Alliance Defending Freedom have already come out and said that they have a more complex and more surefire way to challenge marriage equality. So let's not rest on our laurels. I'll meet you at the party, but the party does end so we can get back to the office, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and we got to keep the work up. But when I think about that goddamn case, and I say goddamn literally as well as an expression of frustration, what's amazing is that she did all of that in the name of God and Jesus and what have you, what have you, what have you. And as this Bible-toting woman of the Lord, she's been married 4 times to 3 different men, which good for you. Go for it. Go forth and marry as many men as you want, as many women as you want, have as many children as you want. But if you're going to tell me that I should be living by your Bible, I think you have to step up there first and be living that way yourself. The hypocrisy of it all is unbelievable. And it makes me think a lot about the conversation we had last week with Brooke Palmieri about spiritual liberation and spiritual oppression. And so, I'm not going to spend a lot of time thinking about her, but I am going to say, as so many people have said to me, for me in the past, I pray for her, that she will get some spiritual liberation and get out of whatever trap it is that she has found herself in. And I hope that she'll have to pay several hundred thousands of dollars in legal fees and fines for bringing this useless case to begin with.
Bless her heart.
Bless
Yeah,
her
it
heart.
is. It is. She's definitely gonna. She was on the losing end of that, and I don't think that she'll be in the next chapter of the fight against marriage equality. But it's part of the. They're being pretty strategic with it because they're testing the waters. They're dipping their toe in the waters to see how people react to it, and so yeah, she's so tired. But you are very, very right, Hugh, darling. Before we jump in, because I know you mentioned Brooke Palmieri, our fabulous author that we had a great conversation with last week. If you didn't see it, make sure you go over to the YouTube channel and check it out. Second thing before we jump in, I just wanted to wish you and your partners a very happy 15th anniversary.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I cannot believe it's been 15 years that the 3 of us have been together. It's a little crazy to look back and be like, wow, I'm used to moving every year and, before this, not having a relationship that lasted longer than a year or two. And now the 3 of us have been together, annoying the shit out of each other for 15 years.
I mean,
So
that is
shout out
a
to Tim and Jason. I
milestone.
love you boys.
Oh, we love you too. And congratulations on your upcoming book. My bad. I cannot wait
Oh,
to get it.
May will be, if you're in the book club, which if you're listening, yeah, maybe should be, but you'll be getting copies and they will be signed. So please
Oh
Check it out. My bad.
Ah, well, congrats again. And so everybody, our new what did I do with it? I
Oh
just
yeah,
had
where
it.
did you copy go?
Do you have it? Oh, it's
Did it
over
which
there.
away? I got it. I got it. I got it.
You got
I
it.
got it.
Our
I
new
got
book for this month is, of course, Bargain Witch,
it.
which is a fantastic book. It's
Which?
by Brooke Palmieri, and it's a great book
It really
and
is.
super wonderful. We got to talk to him. If you didn't get a chance to check that out, it's over on the All Store website as well. And you can see everything, every brilliant morsel that fell out of Brooke's mouth.
He has such awesome stories to tell. Like there are so many in the book. There's so many that he told us when we were interviewing him. This is actually the second time that I've gotten to interview him. He invited me to talk to him at one of the New York City launch event for Bargain Witch at Hive Mind Bookstore, which, if you are in Brooklyn, is one of our many fabulous independent queer book spaces that are also refuges and oases. And so it was great to talk to him in person, great to talk to him with you, and to see so many people turning out for this like weird, witchy, queer, bizarre little book that I just loved.
I agree, and if for we are just coming out of Halloween. I mean, I think I'll be honest. We'll disclose that that was part of what helped us land on this book at this time.
Hmm.
But beyond that, we what I didn't expect was to be able to get such a perspective that really did great work of connecting history to just sort of spirituality and witchcraft, obviously, but like even into oneself a sense of queerness and their
Hmm.
journey to and then through either queerness or transness or both. And the thing that keeps, it's a buzzword now, but the thing that keeps ringing around in my head is sort of bodily autonomy, being able to
Hmm.
take responsibility and make your own decisions and take the lead in your life, take ownership in your life of the things, the choices, the decisions, the needs that you have, and fulfilling those needs, whether it's anything from joy or to just like material needs that we all have to like survive, because those things are literally being attacked and stripped away from us in this moment, right? And so
Yeah.
we are going to have to figure out, bitch, if you don't have a high paying job, or if your job gets replaced by AI and you don't have enough money to eat, then you're going to have to join food stamps. And if you don't have any food stamps, you're going to have to get it from a pantry. If you can't get it from a pantry, you're going to have to figure out which friends or chosen family you're going to help trade with to get some food, and you can clean their whatever and help that. And if you don't have that, and if you're isolated, because a lot of us are isolated socially these days,
Hmm.
you better learn how to either grow something, and if you can't grow something, you're gonna have to learn how to read a spell to get what you need.
Yeah. Yeah. What I love about that and what I love about what Brooke was saying to us, and this is the thing that's been ringing in my head ever since the interview. He said,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm gonna paraphrase it. I'm not gonna get it right because he is so brilliant and so well spoken. But he said that he, blessed his queerness and his transness, that in fact those were the things that got him to think about, how do I deal with all of these difficult things? How do I get to the place where I want to be? That he always had to be, again, using a buzzword here, but like self-actualizing, that he had to like get out
Mm-hmm.
and pursue who he wanted to be, what he wanted to be. And because of that, he was ready for all of this, and ready for these hard times that we are in right now, right? So many queer people, like you said, we're isolated now. But so many of us grew up isolated, We are
Mm-hmm.
being oppressed now by religious bigots in office. Well, that was the 80s, frankly. And I'm not happy that we're back there, but I do think one of the things that really this book like has driven home for me is how much this practice of self-initiating and getting into our own histories, getting into our own beliefs and our own intentions. I mean, that is part of the practice of being a queer person. And I think, at least, that it has prepared us for this moment in ways that maybe some straight people just aren't ready. They've been traveling the path they were expected to be on their whole lives. And now, when that path is falling apart around them, they're having to figure out new things in the thick of it, where at least we have chosen families and we have ancestors and we have people like Brooke bringing out these histories in these books. If you haven't checked out the book yet because you're listening to us and you love us, but you want to like go and look at it, Brooke says this is about the alignment of occult history with the eternal now and the queer future, and that is what we need.
It is 100%. Can you recap just a little bit about the book? We've been talking around the book, and we were talking about Brooke, who's so brilliant. Can you, for the folks that need a refresher,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe you're listening to this and you haven't actually read the book, could you just give us a quick recap?
Yeah, it's Bargain Witch is a collection of essays that are really esoteric. They move all around. You know, Brooke worked in a magical bookshop in London called Treadwell, so he has a long history there as a spiritual practitioner. But he also did a PhD in radical 17th century publishing and has actually looked at like those books, those sources from which we get our history of witchcraft and the occult. You know, he was in London writing about them, researching them, reading them. And then he also lives in the Mojave Desert, has this spiritual practice, and also does like queer archival practices through his company, Camp Books. And all of that shows up in these beautiful little essays. And that's what I love too, is that it's so accessible. At no point did I feel like not knowing any of this history or not being a particularly spiritual person was I kept out of the book. He invites all of us in to self-initiate alongside him. And that is what I love about Bargain Witch.
Oh my gosh. I mean, it really is. It's so rich and so layered in a really unexpected way. And it's kind of, I mean, you summed it up perfectly, but it is kind of difficult to um, easily and very succinctly sum up what this book,
Mhm.
like give people a very good idea of what this book is because it's touches on so many parts of his life. It's a commentary on society as is. It's obviously, there's some historical like accounts and references to and information about witches of yesteryear.
Mhm.
There's talk about the conditions that both from the history's perspective and then modern day like that sort of align and it's just really and then there's Brooke's personal like experience through it. So it feels like part memoir, part you know, I don't know
Yeah.
I,
Part spell book,
instructive.
part
Yeah, spell
grimoire.
book. Yeah, it's like all those things. And it's really interesting. I've always had a fascination with witches, because and what they represented for me throughout my life has changed a lot. I know throughout like history and like when I think of it's just so interesting when I think of like sort of like puritanical Christian
Mm.
religion and the oppression, the oppressive nature that was brought through, um, you know, to a lot of people, witches represent danger and like that's like woman that should not be. She just an evil woman. I don't know how
Mhm.
people would like. I guess that's what they would describe. How they would describe a witch as often being like evil and unattractive and gonna put a spell to harm
Horny and
you.
mhm.
Yeah, an outcast just by nature. I don't know if it's like she is an outcast because from their perspective, if she's an outcast because she is a witch or if she's a witch because she's an outcast. That's not
Mhm.
fully, I don't really know, but like that exists there and sort of that lore and that story. And then once paganism was squashed by the expansion of Catholicism, sort of any sort of magic or healing powers that weren't, discovered by men
Mhm.
they were deemed dangerous and harmful
Yeah.
and blasphemous. But I think it's not necessarily, now that I think about it, like healing powers that weren't discovered by men. I think it was anything that couldn't be like commercialized or turned into commerce, then later on capitalism,
Mhm.
then corporatism and now this whatever the fuck we're trying to live in now. That couldn't be like taken and exploited
Yeah.
and because the exploitation of it, the exploitative nature of it is if you have a problem like and the time when witches were doing something, casting spells and actually making something happen, whether it was a healing spell or whatever it was, a protection spell or whatever it was, that was when these men were going around as snake oil salesmen, saying, "Oh, you
Hmm.
have this disease. Here, give me all your money, and here's your thing." And then they either took your money and ran, or get you hooked on some opioids or something that wasn't even addressing the problem. And so that was they didn't have the answer. These men were never. It didn't start with the healing. It was just recognizing a need, recognizing the desperation that a lot of people had. If these people didn't have access to money and all the and power and stuff like that, then I mean, to be granted, like even Queen Elizabeth was up in there brushing her teeth with sugar and whatever.
And
So
arsenic or whatever.
yeah,
No,
so
but
like
I think you're right. I think so much of this is about like devaluing women's contributions to the world, especially women who are not, who are older, right? Who are not about to have children, women who are educated, women who have jobs, whether that's, making a hex or midwifing,
mhm,
and the thing that I think you're so right on about is this idea that we get from religion, from Christian religions, but from all the Judeo-Christian religions, and the kind of cultural knowledge we've built up around them that is separate, but is like women, witches make a deal with the devil. Well, anyone can make a deal with the devil, right? Why is it that we focus on women? Why do we hear so much about what you hear about warlocks occasionally, but that's like a very small slice of this, and it's because it's the men in religion, that's the whole thing. In Christianity, it's men can be priests, men can be in charge of the ceremony, men are the conduit to God. And so not only are these women who are living on their own, who are flouting their society, who are having jobs and are knowledgeable, but they're also taking up a spiritual position that those men did not want. And that's why I think we spend so much time not ever focusing on warlocks or even the devil when we think about witchcraft. It's about women being wrong, being bad, being free thinking, being free spirits, being or having any kind of autonomy, and especially having that kind of knowledge that allows other women to be autonomous, teaching women what plants are abortificants and how not to have children if you don't want them, teaching women how to heal wounds, teaching women how to take care of livestock, right? These are all things that in one way or another fall into these ideas of what witches are or can be or can do. And women weren't supposed to have that kind of knowledge. And I think that's what I love about Brooke's book, among everything else, is that it's a real celebration. As he said to us at the end of our interview, he was like, I don't know if there's a witch in history that I don't like, because every one of them fought that fight.
yeah, and we did ask in our interview. Here's a teaser, Brooke, about sort of the best and the worst witches in history, and that was obviously Brooke's answer. But Brooke did bring up Mother Shipton, who was like Brooke's favorite witch. I looked her up a little bit. She's like I think 17th century or 18th century woman who she was English, like an English soothsayer, witch, and you know I remember Brooke talking about like the relationship that a lot of these women, Mother Shipton, I think the reason why Brooke says that she is his favorite is because she represents the classic witch, like the one that we
Mm.
think of when we think of a witch, the picture that pops into her mind. It's inspired by images, paintings, drawings of her likeness. Hunched over with the nose and maybe
Right,
a
the
wart on the
nose.
end and whatever she's doing. And so but that really does speak to the relationship that this woman and women like her in that time and maybe throughout time, their relationship to poverty. I talked earlier about like
Mm.
them being an outcast. Were they a witch because they're an outcast, or an outcast because they're a witch? A lot of times they were cast out because of they were not the part of the aristocracy. We don't hear about these
Right.
witches being a part of like in the inner folds of society. These are women who are like are not working or like out on the or working for themselves and
Hmm.
not sort of like ingratiated into the aristocracy essentially, and they are poor, but like that's not a unique thing. It certainly
No.
isn't now, and it wasn't then. And these are women who like they weren't, many of them were single, not necessarily
Hmm.
married, so they didn't have access to even the baseline sort of like money and they weren't following the path that was prescribed to women. Women were not supposed to be up there talking and telling their knowledge. They're supposed to be
Hmm.
in the house cooking for their husband. And if they didn't have a husband, then something was wrong with them. They're a witch. And it was
Yep.
probably as easy as that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that there's a real connection between this kind of history and queer history, and it rests on exactly what you're talking about. That idea of being cast out and outcast and never being in the position of power. Because I think about witches, and I think about all the like sources we learn about from them, like the historical witches, and it's
Hmm.
always them being hanged, them being harassed in newspapers, them being villainized. And you can just swap out witches
Or
for queer people.
burned.
You can swap
Hmm.
out witches and queer people for people of color in this country, right? It's like it's that same if all the sources you have in history are never the person themselves speaking, but always somebody else talking about them and telling you how they're evil and wrong and bad and we arrested them, it tells you something about that history.
I'm glad you touched on that. And that's one thing that Brooke did touch on a little bit was like, basically needing to scapegoat somebody. And that is sort of always the mainstay of the playbook for history. I think we mentioned that there was like about 3 pages in the playbook for oppressing people,
Mm-hmm.
and a big portion of that is scapegoating and finding. And it's really interesting in America and modern times for sure. At least 20th century, well, certainly 19th century and beyond. Um, well, even before that, but like in our modern day thinking, the new scapegoat, like we've moved away from witches. They've moved away from witches. The white men have
Mm-hmm.
moved away from like demonizing and persecuting women because they have another class of people, another group of people. It's people of color, it's queer people, it's different, not that we didn't exist throughout history in all those different areas, but like like in England, there were not enough people of color that anybody had ever met to be talking about let's go all go down there and find them. And so yes, there were people from the African diaspora who were brought to, the UK and parts of Europe and things like that, but not at the scale. They were not as visible as women, so they were not
Mm-hmm.
a representative class that you could say we're making a rule. All the women in town have to do this, and so they were like not as an easily identifiable and underclass. I guess that's what I'm trying to say,
Yeah.
and women were. But then things started to move and people started to immigrate and things started moving around and we started mixing from country to country, and we all the slave trade happened and things started going around the world. Then we started realizing that we had opened up culture and access to different groups of people, and suddenly have people we can demonize. We can demonize Indian
Mm-hmm.
people. We can demonize native, like indigenous people in America, First Nation people. We can demonize people that we'd never seen, that they'd never seen before. Suddenly
Yep.
they are. And it wasn't even witch. They were just whatever they couldn't even call it witches, because witches is about like an outcast from our culture, this whatever the mainstream dominant culture in that place. But they were like this whole, they're all uncivilized. They're doing some kind of
Mm-hmm.
religion. They're doing some voodoo. We have to get them. And then suddenly we have missionaries. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's true. And I think we can take all of that stuff. Like, it's like the same rules apply. If you are reading about anything today and there are no voices from that group speaking, you're only hearing other people talk about them and they're being characterized as evil and without moral compass, without a purpose. Like, it's not just that they maybe have done something bad, but they are intrinsically evil people that you never hear from them and you only ever hear from them about them when it's a problem to the people in power. Like, probably you're getting sold a shitty story. And that, I think Brooke makes that so obvious in terms of witches, but we can use that lens to see the world today more clearly, I think.
100%. I mean, we need to, and that's one of the things that we do here on this podcast and this show, is we really try to. That's certainly my goal, and as I know it is yours, is to use history, the lessons of history, to better explain what we're experiencing now, and then we can do the
Yes.
reverse. We can use the experiences that we're going through now to give us perspective on what the history was and is.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah.
Yeah, and I'm so excited. I know we got to wrap today up, but this book has so much depth in it, and there is so much more for us to talk about over the next few weeks. And so I hope you are all ready for a real journey into the spiritual, because we talked about witchcraft today, and we talked about witchcraft with Brooke, but Brooke also talked in general about spirituality and spiritual liberation. And that's something I really want to get into with you, because I'm not a spiritual person. Like Brooke, I was raised Catholic in a way that alienated me. And he said something. He said something like that it made him realize the problem wasn't with God. The problem was with other people. And I think that took me a much longer journey
And
than it did him.
religion.
But anyway, and religion. The problem is with
Yeah.
religion.
I want to dive into that, and I also want to dive into this notion of queer people, and particularly, if I say so myself, trans people, sort of being anointed, very like spiritual beings, only not because we're like some kind of special chosen thing, but which I believe we are, but that we are the reason why queer people are special in particular is because we've had to overcome adversity and also have a deeper connection to to what it means to be fully human. And we'll go into that in the following episodes. But it's the book is amazing. The book gives a lot of room and space, even if you were somebody who is like maybe a little uncomfortable with the like talking about the occult, or the notion of like witchcraft, or maybe you're someone who's highly religious. I still think that this book is very accessible. There are some spells, yes, there are some talking about things, but it is ultimately everything that Hugh had mentioned, a better way of understanding and reflecting back to ourselves, our queerness as it relates to as for individuals, and then as it relates to culture in general, and through a sort of religious lens, if you will.
Yeah, a lens that is religious and also fun and weird and silly at times, and also really serious at times. And so, yeah, we'll be back next week with more thoughts on Brooke Palmieri's new book, Bargain Witch.
That's true.
I'm so excited.
If you are listening to this right now, make sure you favorite this and also share it with your friends. And, if you've got an extra couple minutes, do a post for us on social media.
Get your coven together and share the book with them.
Yes. And if you're watching this, then make sure that you click like and subscribe on YouTube. It costs you absolutely nothing, but it really helps us out a great deal. And as Hugh said, going over to our store if you want to see or hear watch our interview with Brooke, which is an amazing interview again. In the meantime,
and we'll be back every Tuesday. You can find us on
Every damn
Spotify,
Tuesday.
Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, wherever you get podcasts. If it's an antenna sticking up from your head that we are broadcasting to, you will find us there on Tuesday.
It's true.
Thanks for listening.
We won't be mad at you if you avoid Spotify. For obvious.
Yes.
Anyway, thank you all for listening and watching. This is Queer History 101, and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
This podcast is part of Pride House Media, hosted by us, Peppermint and Hugh, produced and edited by Josh Rosenzweig, with original music composed by Nell Balaban.
If you enjoyed this episode, then don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. And while you're there, leave us a rating and a review. It really helps others discover the show.
You can stay connected and join the conversation by following us at Peppermint 24/7 or write to us at questions@queer101podcast.com.
Thank you for listening. And remember, our history is your history. Stay proud, stay curious, and we'll see you next time on Queer 101.